aspects, are doing it basically on emotions. But for an Atiku Abubakar, for example, now who is talking about conflict of interest on the part of the present administration, the links of the president's son with, the Chaguri Hightech chain. Do you still call that, emotional, or is there some, do you see some, how will I call it now? Do you see some merit in that argument?
Look, the whole debate first started because people do not understand the nature of the project. Atiku contributed at that point when they raised the issue, they didn't go through the due process. When they now realize that they went through the due process and it's an EPC project plus F, which is engineering, construction, procurement, and financing project, is like a counterpart project. The federal government is only providing the counterpart funding for that project. They changed the story. The story now became, yes, well, maybe they went through due process, but why Hightech? Without saying why not Hightech? That is one thing they never mentioned. Hightech is probably the only company in Nigeria today that specialized in the construction of roads along the coastal area. You can see, for instance, high engineering input into coastal road. You can see what they've done with Eco Atlantic and some other places. So therefore, there are different methods of shortlisting contractors. You can do selective tendering, you can do open tendering and all that. So in the federal government's wisdom, which the FEC agrees and which the due process office also agreed, they chose to do it that way and then got the clearance. And suddenly the story changed to Seyi Tinubu. He sits on the board. The impression that everybody gave, the article gave, is that Seyi Tinubu is actually a business partner of the Shagoris. They sit on their empire together. But that's far from it. We now know that Seyi Tinubu only sits on a company called CDK, which is based in Shagamu, a cable company, cable and wire company, based in Shagamu.
With links? Does it have links to the...
To the Shagori. The Shagoris have their minority shareholders in that project. Seyi Tinubu, as an individual, has a right to do business in Nigeria like any other person. Seyi has been sitting on the board of that company since 2018. Far before the father even thought of contesting for presidency. No, how fair is it? Because his father is now the president, Seyi Tinubu should go and withdraw all his investment. Is he required by law to do that? Is he violating any law?
Some are saying because of the moral implication and then the way to avert some of these insinuations is it's best to have done, probably giving it to someone who does not have any one thing whatsoever affiliation with the president's relative.
Well, that's the argument of the Atikus of this world. But Atiku, as vice president, was tasked by the former president Obasanjo, with the task of unbundling the economy, privatizing it. How did Intels came about? As a sitting vice president. This is not what we are talking about here. What happened? Look, go and read Obasanjo's book, My Watch. You will see a lot of revelations in there. So Atiku is not even in a good position to raise some of this argument. Now, but in reality, let us leave the emotional issues apart. Is Tinubu the one, President Tinubu the one sitting on the board of Chagori? Is he a shareholder in Chagori's business? He's not. Does it mean his son cannot trade in Nigeria? He has a right to, under the law. No law has been contravened in this process. When you look at, don't forget, this Seyi Tinubu has been sitting on the board since 2018, before Tinubu contested the election.
Another concern, Mr. Showunmi, is this, unlike the PPP arrangement, is, this counterfunding, counterpart funding, I should say, which the federal government will also be involved in this project. 13 trillion, 8-year span or thereabout, and all of that. It also doesn't sit comfortably well, with some people, because help us to understand, the dynamics. How much of a good business idea, a good business model that will, in the long run benefit Nigerians indeed, if the government will still go this far in funding a project of this magnitude.
Yeah, like I said earlier, the project is EPC plus F, engineering, procurement, construction plus financing. The federal government, at the end, in the final analysis, will not be contributing, more than 30% by the time the project is completed. Currently, the federal government has contributed about 1 trillion or something, as part of its own counterpart funding. The way counterpart funding projects works is this. You have a private sector financing a project or an independent sector financing it, and then you receive the counterpart funding. The federal government is not responsible for funding the project. They are only responsible to contribute their own counterpart funding for that project. The bulk of the financing of this project will come from Hightech. That is from the private sector partner. I mean, you are talking about 70% of it will come from the private sector partner. And so therefore, given the nature of the funding of that project, there is no way how we can fault the federal government on this, because that project has been on since 1955, first conceived.
That's right. Very quickly, because of our time, governors of Bayelsa, Rivers, Cross River, Edo, and Delta State have actually lauded the president for initiating this project. But all their critics still believe that, okay, fine, you could have just started from Calabar. Why Lagos first? Why do you have to start from Lagos? Is it because you are from Lagos? That's the reason why the project started from Lagos. Quickly respond to that.
Very simple. The economic corridor, which we immediately gain from it, is important. So the choice to start from Lagos for me is understandable. You have industries, and including Dangote refinery, along that road. Don't forget, a good portion of Epe has been dualized to allow for easy access, towards Benin. So that's understandable. When you talk about starting from Calabar, it will not have immediate economic benefit, in my view, than unlike starting from Lagos. So those who are saying that are only imputing things which I don't think really exist in the minds of
the project might be abandoned, because you talked about so many projects that were started and abandoned along the line. You're not worried that this might probably suffer the same fate?
I doubt.
Even beyond the Tinubu administration.
I doubt whether this will happen. We all remember that when the federal government, removed subsidy, one of the promises made by the federal government is that they will invest in infrastructure, education, and health. And we are beginning to see the spin-off benefit of that, which is they now have the finance, the money to, embark on that project. And that is why the project is lasting 8 years, and I don't see that project being abandoned in any form by any government, whether current government or a future government. I don't see that happening.
And the issue of compensation, in addition to that, because I was about to ask you how sufficient this compensation is for, according to government, those with valid papers and all of that. In addition, the residents there, the landowners there have spoken about this wasn't the demarcation that, previous governments had arrived on. There appears to have been a relegation, so to speak. So villagers, the landowners are asking that. So what happens to the previously demarcated, portion of land which they had separated for this project many, many years ago, and now you're coming to take about, bring down villages just because of this project? Can you make that, just a quick?
Yeah. Yes. Payments, compensation has been paid on the previous routes. That's correct. And on the new route currently, the federal government is paying compensation, to those who are affected. How adequate is that compensation depends on whether in the first instance you have building permit, you have all the necessary permits which you are supposed to have, CFO and all that. If you don't have that, then that's a different situation. Then we should also not forget that some of them may not necessarily get as much as what they're expecting. The simple reason is because 240 meters, from the shoreline happens to be federal government. So for federal government to agree to even pay compensation to those who are already encroaching on their land, I think it's laudable. It's an